Hi everybody, this is Joel Kennedy with Kennedy Violins. So today I'm going to do a playthrough and little mini lesson of the song A River Runs Through It. So there's probably a lot of different versions of this piece online. I found a website that offers the piece in many different keys. So I picked a key that I thought was the most accessible to the most people, right? Because there's a lot of people at different levels who watch these videos. This one is in G major. Now, the song repeats itself a lot, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to play through the entire thing because it's like 2 pages, takes so much time. I'm going to play little sections and then talk a little bit about each section as I play through them to give you guys some ideas and strategies on how to be the most successful at playing this song. Okay, so the main theme starts at the beginning, obviously. Okay, so that's the main theme in the beginning. Okay, so the second theme is a little bit different style, but kind of a variation on the first theme. And that starts the 1, 2, 3, fourth line down. So midway through the fourth line, we have kind of the second theme. Okay, and then it just kind of repeats and does some little variations. Okay, so remember, when we're learning a new piece, we always want to have structure to our practice. We don't want to just get a piece and just start blasting through it and then play it as many times as we can and hope that it just gets better and better. We want to have a certain structure, so we want to be pretty analytical in the beginning, and then we will learn a lot faster if we do that. So, what do we look at with a new piece? So the first thing that we look at is we look at the key signature. So we're in G major. So all of our fingers are going to be in the natural position with the exception of F sharp. So one of those F sharps is going to be on your E string, right? So remember, when you play an F, a first finger on your E string, on the violin, when you put your first finger in the same spot on the E as it is on the A, and the D, and the G, it's actually a sharp. So when you play a first finger on the G, that's an A natural. On the D, it's an E natural. On the A, it's a B natural. But when you put that on the E, that first finger in the same place on the E, that's an F sharp. The natural position for first finger on the E is actually low, right? So because we have that one sharp, we're going to have our first finger in that same position as it is on the other strings. Okay, so the other finger that we have to consider that won't be in the natural position will be the second finger on the D string. So instead of being a low 2, that's an F natural, which is the same as this F natural on the E string. Now we're going to play a high 2, the same as the natural position of the second finger on the G string, right? So the second finger on the G string, it's a high second finger. That's its natural position. On the D string, it's actually low. That's an F natural. But since we have that F sharp, we're going to make it a high 2. So now our second finger is going to be in the same exact spot on the G string as it is on the D string. Okay? Okay, so our time signature is common time, otherwise known as 4/4 time, right? So we look at the very beginning of the piece, we see that C, that refers to common time or 4/4 time, which means that your quarter note gets the beat and there's 4 beats in a measure. However, because we're learning this piece and we want to do our rhythms correctly, I'm actually going to play this as if that the 8th note gets the beat. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because the piece is written so it looks like it's fast, all right? I don't know who wrote this out. If I wrote it out, I wouldn't have written it this way. The way that they write it makes you think it's really fast. They put quarter note equals 64, which is not really realistic because then the piece doesn't sound right. So whoever put the metronomic marking on here, quarter note equals 64, and they put it in 4/4 time. I don't think that was a great idea. So I'm just going to teach this as if the eighth note gets the beat. So it's almost like it's 8/8. So 8 beats per measure, eighth note gets the beat. So if I put my metronome on, right, tick, 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 that'll be an eighth note going by. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, a little bit faster than that. But so now everything is like twice as much as you usually think of it as. So a half note, instead of being 2 beats, is going to be 4 beats, right? A dotted half note, instead of being 3 beats, is going to be 6 beats. So I'm doing that because it's going to be easier for everybody to learn these rhythms if they're beating in eighth notes instead of quarter notes. Now, after you learn the piece with eighth notes, then sure, you could put the metronome on quarter notes and then you can play it just fine. But for learning purposes, a lot of times a very common technique is to subdivide. So you put the metronome on a smaller metronomic value in order to help you learn the rhythms correctly. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm putting the metronome on the eighth note instead of the quarter note. Okay, so the next thing that we want to map out is our fingerings and bowings. Now, I'm going to play most of this whole thing in first position, just because, again, I want this to be as accessible to as many people as possible. However, there are some sections where it does go into third position. It's unavoidable. So you'll just have to, if you're not used to third position, well, I guess you're going to have to get used to it. There's a few sections that, there's just not much you can do about it. So, okay, so you want to write in your fingerings, so you're always practicing the same fingerings. You never want to be in a place where you're making up the fingerings as you go. You want to map it out and write your fingerings in. Now, you can, of course, play this as fast or slow as you want. You can do whatever dynamics you want. You can do whatever bowings you want. I'm just showing you my bowings and fingerings that I've put in here, and you can either use them or not. Okay, so I've mapped out the fingerings. Okay, now I've also changed the bowings. Whoever wrote this out, they didn't really put any bowings in here, so I put a whole bunch of bowings in here to kind of make it a little bit smoother and a little bit easier to play, and it just makes a lot more sense. So a lot of times when you have a piece that repeats a lot, one of the common strategies that you can use to make it more interesting, so it's not boring, you're just playing the same thing, is to change your speed, change your articulation, or change your dynamic. So that's what I've done in this piece as well. So I've written in a bunch of dynamics. Of course, a person could just flip those and do something completely different, that's fine, but we're just trying to do something to make it more interesting. Okay, so we've covered dynamics, our bowings, our fingerings, our key signature, our time signature. Now we're ready to practice section by section with the metronome. So let's play the first section with the metronome. Okay, so it starts off mezzo piano, and I've got the metronome on 97. So that's 97 to the eighth note. So every beat that goes by, eighth, 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 eighth. And remember, since we're beating the eighth note, when you see a half note, it's not going to be 2 beats, it's going to be 4 beats. Okay? When you see a quarter note, that's going to be 2 beats. When you see a 16th note, that's going to be a half a beat. So there's 2 16th notes per beat. Okay, so from the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you'll see that on the end of the third line, I crescendo to that mezzo forte, right? Which makes sense because we shift the third position, that last measure. So third position, first finger, Then we have that double stop, it's just a fifth. So your first finger is the same position on the E and the A string. Okay, that's called a fifth, right? Because your notes are a fifth apart. So, okay, so 1, 1, 2, 1, then back down to first, then we have that double stop, it's a fourth, right? So we have 2 on the E, 3 on the D, or A, sorry. I'm a violist, all right? What do you know? Okay, so we have 2 on the E, 3 on the A. That's called a fourth. The notes are 4 notes apart. Okay, so one of the reasons why I put that mezzo forte there is because when you are playing double stops, a lot of times it's easier when you're playing louder. Double stops are always harder when you're playing quieter. Plus, it's kind of a climactic moment. So, third, then RIT equals ritardando. Now we have a new section. Okay, so our next section is kind of a variation on the first one, but it's just straight 16th notes. Now, you'll see the lines that I've written above those 16th notes. That indicates legato. So we could play these notes or a million other ways, but when they're legato, right, we want to connect those bow strokes, connect those notes. Right, we almost want to think of our bow not stopping. Of course, physically it has to, but we want to think of our bow as not stopping. We don't want our bow strokes to be super obvious, so we're connecting them. And this will give us that kind of wide, expansive feel. So this is kind of like one of those like, I'm in nature, I'm on the mountain, or maybe you're in the ocean and it's this great expanse or something like that. So you're really opening up your instrument, you're opening up your sound, and you're really trying to create that feeling, and you can do that with these long connected notes. Then piano, because it's a repeat, we want to do something different. Crescendo. Right, then we have another variation. So, what is important? Okay, so we have these legato lines. We're at forte. We have legato lines, so we're making this, it's really expansive, really beautiful. Then we're going down to piano, so we're going to shrink our bow stroke. And remember, keep your bow strokes exactly the same for each note. It's important that your down bows aren't longer than your up bows or vice versa, right? We want consistency, and we want you to be in control of your bow at all times. So the first section is in forte, the second section is in piano. We try to create a moment there. Then we crescendo to mezzo forte when we play that variation on what we just did. So if I put the metronome on, remember there's 2/16 for each beat, because there's 2/16 in 1/8 note. Piano. Mezzo. Okay, and then we're going to retard again to the double bar, very last line, RIT, right? That means retard. Then we have that alligator that's going down to a point, so we're going to get really quiet. Then we have a fermata, or bird's eye, over that open D. Why? Because now we're starting the whole piece all over again. But it's going to change a little bit as we go. So it's almost like we're back to the original theme. Okay? So if I was to start the last measure of the third line from the bottom, right? So... Okay, so it's kind of repeating a bit, right? Now, you'll notice the second line on the second page, the very last measure. You see that little squiggle I put there? So this is kind of shorthand what orchestra players will use all the time, which means take time. So a lot of times if the conductor is conducting something, right, the conductor will kind of take time a little bit to kind of set up the next phrase. So in that last measure, you see the last four notes, right? So what I want to do is set that up because that's kind of the beginning of that theme again. So if I go back to the mezzo forte on the second line, so you see how I kind of set that up? It's a small thing, but sometimes it's those little things that really make it a lot more musical and a lot more interesting. So now going on, if I start the second line at that mezzo forte, MF, medium loud, right? Okay, so what happened there? So you'll notice the fourth line, first measure. Now we're getting towards the end of the piece. Now the composer is trying to write a few things in here that are a little different, that make it a little bit interesting. So now we have, he goes to a fourth finger, right? So now it's kind of like it's yearning more, it's pulling more, it's being more emphatic. So we can put that little squiggle in there again to really kind of emphasize that and kind of really bring it out. So if I start the beginning of the fourth line, so now we are back to where we were before, and we're really setting up the beginning of the piece again, that kind of that main theme. But now that we're at the very end, and we'll really want to do something special to really set up the end of this piece, the feeling of calm, and we're preparing for this piece to end. We've been telling this story the whole time we've been playing, and now our story is finally coming to an end. One of the best ways you can do that is set that up with a difference in dynamic and also a different tempo. So I've marked it slower and then put a piano there. So now let's look at, and you'll see if you look further on the second line between the first and second measure, you'll see a line over that second finger, right? So we're going to be lengthening that note a little bit. There's that little squiggle I put in there to kind of, expand that area, right? And then if you look at the very end of the piece, the last two measures, you see that arrow that's going backwards. That's a squiggle. So now we're really pulling that tempo back and really setting up that last measure. Okay, so now let's try to practice all of these transitions that occur in the very end of the piece, and we'll start the very first measure of the third line from the bottom, and we'll just kind of play around with them a little bit and see if we can create some magic. Not like that. So. Okay, so we've got some little grace notes and other little things in there. You can do them or not. I don't know how much they add to the music. But you'll notice in the very end, I went to third position and played that octave. Now, obviously, if you don't want to do that, you can just play that top note or the bottom note. But one thing that's important is you want to make sure when you get to that last measure that you're at the extreme frog so you can set up that really long note. So, second measure from the end. To the frog. Then here's the octave. Okay. Okay, guys, so that's the walkthrough of the piece. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you guys want to play this. I don't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know if the videos are too long or they're not detailed enough or whatever, so I can continue to give you guys the content that's the most helpful. So with that, I hope you guys have a good time practicing and have a great day.